Welcome to the 10th episode of the Rain Race podcast. We're going to be talking about IMSA's new TV deal with NBC. We're going to be talking about F1's new aero changes for 2019. We're going to be discussing IndyCar regulations, and we're going to round it all off with some race recaps. I'm Chris Aurelio. This is Rain Race. Let's go. Episode 10 of the Rain Race podcast here. I'm joined here alongside Kyle Cuthbertson.
Sup?
And our month of May associate, and beyond month of May, but that's beyond the point, Kevin Rollins.
Hoi.
We have, once more, quite a bit to go over. It is the month of May. It's one of the busiest, or probably the busiest month of the year for racing fans, particularly these two guys who just got back from IMSA Mid-Ohio. Was actually yesterday, but again, beyond the point. The first thing I want to go over here is the IMSA TV deal. IMSA last week announced a new TV deal with NBC Sports for 6 years, which is pretty much an unprecedented deal. You don't usually see TV deals extended that long, but a 6-year deal. They've committed to broadcasting the WeatherTech Championship, the Michelin Sports Car Challenge, and the Mazda Prototype Challenge. Right now, they're saying 3 races on NBC for the next season, with 45 hours on NBCSN, and flag-to-flag coverage for every race will be streamed on NBC Sports Live Extra. It's a 50% increase in the coverage that we're seeing right now from Fox Sports. Starting off with Kyle here, what do you think about this brand new TV deal from IMSA?
I definitely think it's a positive. I think they're going to be a lot better than Fox. I've always preferred NBC over Fox, because Fox, unless they're taking it super serious like they do their NASCAR coverage, which I think their NASCAR coverage is actually really good. If Fox could take sports cars as serious as they did NASCAR, it'd be great, but they don't. So I think NBC is definitely a positive step, especially with the streaming flag-to-flag for every race, more races on NBC. Just, from what they've done, they're going to do with IndyCar next year and having more exposure to the series, I think NBC is definitely a plus over Fox.
From what it's looked like to me, with Fox getting rid of the WEC coverage as well, some people have said that it looks like they're abandoning ship for all motorsport coverage except for NASCAR, but they still have Formula E, Supercross, and I think that's it, honestly. But Kevin, what would you say about this TV deal?
I think it's great. I mean, we get more coverage. The prospect of having Lee Diffie back commentating sports car races. The only thing that I am really skeptical about is how they're going to handle the endurance races, like the Rolex 24 and the 12 Hours of Sebring. I'm curious on how they're going to manage that. But overall, though, with more coverage across this multiple series that are associated with IMSA, I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah, overall, I'm this exact same way. I'm excited to see how it goes. I've been quite a critic of Fox's coverage over the years. I don't think that they do quite a good job, particularly with the endurance rounds. So I'm happy to see a new turn of the wheel so we can hopefully get a little bit of something new going on here. Speaking of coverage deals, something a little bit smaller but also interesting at the same time is that F1 has reached a video deal with Twitter. Now what they're going to be doing here is doing live post-race on Twitter for 10 GPs this year. I don't believe it's been said yet what GPs they're going to be doing it for.
I think they said starting in Spain at least.
Starting in Spain, which is the next race on the calendar at the time this episode is being recorded. They're going to have event highlights as well, and an F1 live show hosted by none other than Will Buxton, and Nico Rosberg will supposedly be involved as well. So this is something very interesting because I know we've seen Thursday Night Football was on Twitter last year, and it's actually quite interesting that we're starting to see Twitter as this live video platform for these major sporting events. So I think overall that's something very interesting to see for this season in Formula One.
Yeah, definitely. I did say that I think this is, a step in the future of coverage, and I also think TV, because I know when they were working on the new IndyCar deal for this year, the TV deal, I know Mark Miles brought up stuff like, Twitter, YouTube, Netflix, Amazon, all the streaming platforms like that, because I do think I do think we're seeing the next generation kind of using Netflix and Amazon Prime and all the streaming more. So I think, and that's why IndyCar, they made their deal so short. I think, what was it, 2 or 3 years only? I think that's why they made it shorter too, because the timing, to stream the races over Netflix or YouTube or whatever instead of TV. I think that time isn't there yet for that to work, but I think in a few years we could start seeing TV disappearing and going more into streaming, and what basically everyone now has. And this whole Twitter thing, you get post-race, pre-race, I think, too, and then you get like event highlights and then the live show. That's just like a first step in the direction I see to get to where Mark Miles was talking about. And also, when I see IMSA with NBC being a 6-year deal, that kind of worries me. They'll be in type of like a IndyCar ABC type of thing where they're stuck, because TV right now, you just don't know what the future holds, really. So it's just like, it depends.
I think it's also interesting when you said a lot of people are shying away from TV, because it's absolutely true. Over the past few years especially, we've seen a lot of cable cutters, people turning their attention towards streaming options, because ultimately it's cheaper, it's easier to access. You don't need to be sitting at home on the couch in front of the TV to watch it. So I think
and you can watch it anytime you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just, I think, Liberty Media employing their knowledge in media to improve the coverage of F1. So I think it's overall an exciting thing to see. Keeping on the topic of F1 as a patented rain race leeway, in 2019, we already discussed previously the 2019 Formula One regulations, but they've added something on where they're approving aero changes, similar to what we saw back in 2009, actually, which would be 10 years ago next year. In 2008, we saw quite radical aero designs throughout all the teams, and then 2009, they made it much more streamlined and simple, and it looks like we're going to be seeing the same thing next year. They're commenting on a simplified front wing and a low outwash potential on the car. Simplified brake ducts with no winglets and a wider, deeper rear wing as well. So overall, I think a lot of teams were split on the decision for this aero change, but in the end, it ended up being approved.
Well, the reason that the teams will be split by it is because the big teams will probably dislike it, because it brings up the prospect of the less funded or midfield and backfield teams getting closer, because we've seen when the drop noses in 2009 came out that everything was pretty well equalized at that point, because in terms of aero efficiency and stuff like that, everybody was brought back together and it was back to square one for them. So it's a major shakeup, and I think it's well welcomed, in my opinion, at least from my point of view, because now they will not spend as much money developing these front wings that have millions of pieces on them.
Like you said, there's going to be a lot less money spent on R&D, so it'll save a ton of money, especially for these smaller non-factory teams. But the thing I also wonder is, will this end up improving the racing? Because I know we saw IndyCar this year go with a lot more of a simplified aero formula, lower downforce, and overall, I'd say so far that's been quite a success. So would you be expecting the same thing from Formula One next year?
Yeah, I think, racing has this really weird cycle, and it's exemplified in Formula One, where the cars will get so complex to a point, and then they get overhauled and resimplified, and then they'll get complex again, even more complex than the extent of where it was before, and then they'll kind of press the reset button. We've seen that in 2009, and then years before that, where they just whitewashed everything, took off all of the aero bits that were radical, and then it built back to that point, and it's back to the point now where that is.
And the last big thing we want to go over here in the news is IndyCar is in the middle of deciding on a new timeline for their new chassis. Right now, they're saying that there's going to be a vote in the summer to decide whether the end of the DW12 will be in 2021 or 2022. Obviously, they've been running with a DW12 chassis since 2012. So everyone had to have seen that that's coming towards the end of its lifetime in the near future. They also teased the idea of more than Dallara being the manufacturer. So going back to a non-spec chassis championship. So that brings forward the question: who do you guys think would be in the frame to possibly start an IndyCar chassis?
Panos.
Panos?
Yep.
I mean, that's
Right off
interesting.
the bat.
Obviously, Panos made the old G-Force IndyCar chassis back, or the IRL chassis, I guess you want to call them, back in the early to mid 2000s, and they also made the DP01, which was run in the final season and one race of Champ Car. But Kyle, would you see anybody else possibly joining in that frame other than Panos?
They did say they're looking at, what's WEC and IMS is doing with the P2 chassis and multiple manufacturers. So I do think there could be some interest from those guys in those series, like Ligier and Orica and I mean Ginetta. I put Ginetta down just because another chassis. But I just, you just got to look around at guys who could possibly do it. There's not a lot, but basically I think the biggest positive here is the fact that they can open it up, or that they're thinking about opening it up. Because I mean, if the only chassis we have is Dallara, and they have the chassis open and other manufacturers could join if they wanted to, that's fine. But, just being a strict one chassis series, I think, is kind of a downfall. But as long as we can, at least accept the idea of more chassis coming in and not have like a exclusive deal with Dallara, I think it'll definitely be an improvement.
So you also noted here that when they decide on these new chassis regulations, they're also going to be looking towards new engine regulations as well, and saying upwards of 900 horsepower on that one.
Yes.
Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Now, what we've been hearing, there was like some quinky dinks on
Quinky dinks. What a good
Coinky
vocab.
dinks, yeah, boy. And I heard some stuff about 4 cylinders and stuff, and then now they've basically been saying that we're probably going to stick to the V6 twin turbos. The V8s have been talked about a little bit, but I don't think there's enough manufacturer interest in a V8 than a V6. But then just the next engines, they're looking to up the horsepower, more horsepower, bigger sound, hopefully we can get back to the late 90s where we're pushing 900 plus horsepower. That's my dream right now, is we get 900 plus horsepower. That's the dream.
I just hope that if they do want to sort of make it turn into that 90s era kart again, that they don't make the same mistakes that they did where they end up losing a ton of money. So hopefully everything is kept in the realm of cost capping in a way. They keep a close eye on that, because you don't want a series to spiral out of control with costs again.
That's the one thing that I think that they'll be hesitant on approving this is they will need to implement some form of cost capping to avoid it from going out of control like the Aero kits did, and where it almost killed the 33 car tradition of the Indy 500 because they could not get 33 entrants.
Yeah, I think that's going to be absolutely on their front of their mind when they make this decision. But anyway, moving on to our next segment of the program. In case you missed it, if you are new to this podcast, we give Kyle 2 minutes to discuss as much news that is smaller news that we wouldn't usually go over. He has 2 minutes to go over as much as that as he possibly can. So 2 minutes are on the clock. Here you go.
Honda and Red Bull begin their 2019 talks for an engine supplier. Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports truck transporter driver Eric Stewart's house is burnt down in a fire, and the racing community, being as great as they always are, have already donated $10,000, and we will put the link to the GoFundMe in the description if you'd like to donate, and if you're watching on YouTube. Davey Hamilton Jr. is going to race in the Freedom 100 with Pelfrey, another Freedom 100 entrant. It's very nice to see. Scott Dixon was on American Ninja Warrior, so a Kiwi was on American Ninja. It doesn't make sense to me still. A date set for IndyCar's next engine formula, which I think we talked about that, but I have it in. Wayne Taylor Racing's 2016 winning chassis is up for sale. A lot of people freaked out about that, but it's no big deal. Kyle Kaiser, Matthias Lace, and Robert Wickens completed their ROP testing, and Danica and Karam finished their refreshers. Simpson and Briscoe became U.S. citizens in IMSA. Aston Martin is working on a 2019 North American program in GTLM, and then some customer programs in GTD with their new car. In F1, Miami is going to vote on plans for the 2019 race next week to see if that'll happen. The Porsche 919 Evo will make a Nordschleife demo run. Dragon Speed isn't going to return with BR1 and WSUE, jeez, until the root of the crash for Pietro is found. I'm going to mispronounce this name, Chris, if you want to say it.
Jean Todt.
Yeah, I knew I would. Is aiming for 7 manufacturers with the 2020 LMP1 regulations.
I just want to say, how did you not know? And by the way, 10 seconds left. I think that's a new record, 10 seconds. But Jean Todt is the president of the FIA.
Oh, well, I would have said Jean Todt.
Okay,
well, I knew I was going to mispronounce it, though.
I want to throw in this note that Wayne Taylor is not switching away from Cadillac DPI. The reason that they're selling that chassis is because they no longer have use for it. They have 3 Caddy DPI chassis, including the one that they're selling, and that was just out of the cycle, pretty much.
Yeah, everyone flipped out, and it's just they have more than one chassis, guys.
Yeah, so if you'd like to help us out here, you can donate to our GoFundMe page by the 3 of us, the Cadillac DPI. We would be greatly appreciated. Link for that will be in the description below.
If you donate $100, we'll let you drive the car for a lap. 1 lap. You get 1 lap.
That's a pretty good deal, honestly. $100 for one. Well, I mean, it depends on what track. If it's like Bristol or Martinsville, but
they can drive it in my backyard.
Oh, your dirt track, your homemade
Kevin
dirt
is
track.
building a dirt track, guys.
We have
Kevin, I'm convinced
track.
you wouldn't even be able to ride a bicycle around that thing. It looks really small.
Kyle, bring your bike.
They got a lawnmower to go around that thing.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Recaps.
Anyway, yeah, recaps. The 2 of you, like I said earlier, attended IMSA at Mid-Ohio, so you would know firsthand.
Are we allowed to go over what we did first?
Yes, you are, but I just said I'm going to pretty much sit back for most of this one and let you 2 talk, as long as it's in a reasonable time frame.
Okay, so
Kevin, just list off everything that we did that happened before we go over the race itself.
You wore a sombrero.
Yeah, me and Noah wore sombreros, which Noah is our friend. You probably don't know about because he hasn't been on the podcast, but yes, you'll hear his name.
I signed Jordan Taylor.
His
no,
suit,
you signed his
the
fire
inside
suit.
of his
yeah,
suit.
You don't want to.
Yeah, okay.
Don't trick these people.
Well, the suit was on his person at the time.
Whatever,
and then I
Kevin.
signed a tire on Magnus Racing's Audi.
So at the start of the race, Kevin's signature was on the Magnus Audi's tire.
I just want to give quick context to that, though. I'm sorry I'm jumping in here, but the reason why Kevin was signing all these things, number 1, just because he likes to do crazy things that nobody else would think to do, but number 2, he was engaged in an autograph war with somebody else who we
Diecast Reviews
yes
on YouTube,
Yes.
Mr. Brody.
More promos for
And
people.
he signed Sebastian Saavedra's shoe and Magnus Audi's other tire, one of the other tires, that is. I signed Joao Barbosa's sock.
See, that one was the holy grail. He signed Joao Barbosa's sock, and Christian Fittipaldi got a video of it.
Noah tried to sign his shoe, but everybody knows that his shoe is designed by his daughter, and that was not going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Meanwhile, I wore a sombrero, and I was going up to drivers and people and asking if they could wear the sombrero and take a selfie. And I got a selfie with Ricky Taylor wearing the sombrero, Jordan Taylor, Jack Harvey, which was funny, and then the Holy Grail. Oh well, I also got Pepe, which is Max Angelelli, and then the Holy Grail of all of it was Michael Shank. That one was funny.
The real Holy Grail would have been Montoya.
Oh my! We didn't have enough time to ask Montoya to do it. That would have been hilarious. Chip Ganassi refused to wear a hat, by the way, and then I went to Ollie Gavin and I asked him if he wanted to do it, and he said no, but we're gonna give this to Antonio Garcia. It's kind of like a joke, and he wasn't. Antonio Garcia didn't think it was too funny, and Jan Magnussen took the hat and he put it on top of the Corvette. So yeah, we made some. We caught some attention in those sombreros. It was pretty fun.
Could we get on to the race, though? Because that's the point
Possibly.
of this podcast. You know what? You said possibly, so I'm going to start it off here.
Hold on, you don't have a right to. 'cause
I'm
you
sorry,
weren't at the
Kevin. This is my
race.
podcast. You're getting shut off. I'm the producer of this. And at the end of the day, if you continue talking, you're getting edited out. So, so
Cheap threat.
it is a threat. It's a very direct one.
Calling the cops, you ass.
Yeah. I think the most notable thing I saw about this race was that the traffic was quite an issue for the prototypes when they
It
were.
was so interesting.
Bad.
That's a good contrary of words there, but
Well, okay, it took forever.
I don't think it's-
It took forever for the 2 Acuras to get around the 2 car. Or no, it was the 22 of
Yeah.
Duran. Took them forever.
And
Lap
also-
traffic versus GT traffic, Kevin.
and Mazda got, well, yeah, that was the biggest problem, was the lap traffic, but Mazda got stuck behind the Core Autosport car, this Core Autosport Orica, for quite a few laps. So that was an issue for them. That cost them a lot of time. I guess brings me on to a quick point here. Should IMSA adopt a blue flag system? Because, I mean, the way WEC does it is it's pretty much connected to the timing, and if it sees that a prototype is approaching a slower car, it'll just flash a blue light on the side of the track, and that seems pretty. I'd say it's pretty easy to implement. I mean, I know that IMSA and WEC both use the same timing partner, so I don't see any reason why they couldn't do that. I think that it would make the races a lot more fair, because that ended up being extremely frustrating at the end, because it ruined a battle for the win between the 2 Acuras when they got stuck behind the 22 ASM.
It was kind of weird how all, like the top 4 in prototype were all together racing, and then after like a few pit stops and some traffic, they were pretty far apart, and traffic really separated them a lot. It looked like Montoya was going to actually have a run on Taylor in the end, and they were actually catching through lap traffic for a while, but then just caught him the wrong way behind the 22 car, and it wasn't a race anymore. Besides GTD, that I never got to see like all of the final lap of that, but we just realized out of nowhere that they were nose to tail, like the commentators kind of did this on the last lap.
Yeah,
But
Meyer Shank kind of came out of nowhere.
That whole last lap of GTD it's probably one of the best battles I've seen in Mid-Ohio. If who was in the car in the end? Was that Cat? Oh, it was Prent. If at the top of the key S's, I mean, if he wouldn't have brake checked to not hit him, and if he could have stayed side by side down the hill, they would have gotten side by side, and it would have been on then. But one little mistake from Prent, and it was over. It was a good battle, though.
Yeah, I think
Oh yeah.
GTLM was pretty separated. I mean, there were still some good battles throughout the race with Corvette and Ford.
It sort
yeah.
of ebbed and
BMW
flowed.
was-
I mean, in the early part of the race, it was all Porsche at the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, but then once you got to
BMW
the
kind of came out. If
nitty-gritty-
BMW wouldn't have gotten a penalty, I think it would have been closer, because didn't the BMW still finish second?
Yeah, they were creeping up at the end on the Porsche, so
They did have they had a penalty like midway through the race, I believe. So that definitely
then-
killed them.
And then once you got back to 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, they were all in a pack. And there
Yeah.
were some pretty good battles between the Corvettes and the Ford GTs. The 911 Porsche just sort of fell back for whatever reason.
I think the entirety of this recap is for a caution-free race, and being a 2-hour and 40-minute race, caution-free, it actually produced a lot more battles than you would actually expect, and it was actually decently interesting. It was
hey, I just
nothing special about this race, like, and it wasn't nothing like too boring about it either. It was kind of one of those classics, you know.
Hey, I just realized something. The last IMSA race you two have been to has been caution free, and the last one I've been to is caution free as well. So we bring I don't even know what we bring, because it's not really excitement, but we just bring a lack of caution. So if you don't want cautions,
it's like the signature of this pocket. We bring like
The one thing about the race, though, that the caution-free thing actually mildly surprised me, considering that on the first lap, we did have an incident between at least 3 cars. The JDC car, the 85, spun out, and then you had contact between the ESM number 2 and the 54 Core Autosport Orica.
It's kind of weird. The number 2 car spent the entire race without that rear rain light and the whole back of it. So
Oh yeah, the wire was just flying off.
yeah, it was just flying around
back there.
And then the core car spent the whole race with like loose bodywork everywhere.
No, they replaced the front nose at the end.
Remember the rear of the car was shaking a lot, like the
Yeah,
whole race.
that's the one
Kinda
thing about
broke.
the Orca. Not to go too much off topic, but the Orca's bodywork is kind of weird on how it's divided in the back, and it seems like it could just flap loose pretty easily because it actually connects. The engine cover and the rear bodywork connects in the middle of the cutouts.
So the next recap is WEC at Spa, and I think Chris is going to do the majority of this one.
So yeah, I'll take
I
the
think
majority of this one.
I was at Mid-Ohio Saturday, so I'll probably say a good nothing on this. So Chris.
Well, all right. Before I want to just talk about qualifying quickly. I normally wouldn't do this, but it's a new season with new cars. So
And
the
driver
pace
with
and
broken legs.
yeah, that's true. I'm gonna get to that in a second. The pace in GTE Am, I mean that seemed pretty even all around, but GTE Pro, we saw a little bit of a spread out field. Aston Martin was in the back pretty much all weekend. BMW wasn't finding a ton of pace either. It just seemed to be Porsche and Ford at the front. Ferrari had a decent amount of pace. But
keep in mind, though, with the BMW and Aston, those were brand new cars in their first official outing.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm sure that there's people already throwing around sandbagging allegations because it's the last race before Le Mans. But, again, there's no proof of that. So, LMP1, the Toyotas, as expected, took a 1-2 on a pace in qualifying. Now, the number 7 Toyota was sent to the back because of a fuel flow sensor being off, so they ended up using more fuel than they were allowed to in the lap. So it was the number 8 Toyota that actually inherited the pole, which was the car, of course, that had Fernando Alonso on the lineup.
Olay.
Yes. The biggest thing coming out of the qualifying session, though, was Pietro Fittipaldi involved in an incident where the car basically, I don't even know what happened. There hasn't been any real reports out yet, but the car pretty much just seemed like it stopped steering. The lights shut off. Then they turned back on before the crash actually happened. But the whole car just sort of hopped, lost control, and went flying into the tires in the middle of Eau Rouge. And that's a corner where you don't want to go off. He hit, I believe it was 30 plus G impact, similar to the one that we saw with Harry Tinknell in the race. But overall, he broke both of his legs, and we're hoping for a speedy recovery for him. Of course, he was planning on racing in the Indianapolis 500 this year. That's not going to be happening now, very unfortunately, but again, we wish him a speedy recovery.
Well, they did say, the one thing about Pietro's injury, they did say he'll be back by, he should be back by Mid-Ohio IndyCar, so he'll still get IndyCar starts this year.
Moving on to the actual race itself, though, I thought that even though Rebellion was around 2 seconds slower in qualifying, that they'd have the pace for the race because the hybrids can't run at full power all race long, or else they'll just simply run out of the energy per lap. But that didn't end up being the case. The gap was still there. Toyota pretty much just pulled out very early on. The number 7 Toyota, because of their qualifying penalty, was sent to the back. They had to start a lap down behind every single car in the field. So that was...
And they still finished second.
Yeah, so that was a big struggle for them, and it just showed how off the pace was between the privateers and the LMP1 cars. Now, this obviously brings forward a whole debate about the equivalence of technology, also known as EOT and LMP1, where the goal is to balance two formulas together, so they want to balance the hybrids and the non-hybrid cars. Obviously didn't do a great job at that race. I've seen people on both sides of the spectrum, some people saying change it, make the cars more competitive for Le Mans, and I've seen people say leave it the way it is. Toyota's done more development, so let them be the ones with the advantage. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think these privateers were promised that the fastest privateer car would be similar to the pace of the fastest hybrid, aka Toyota, because they're the only hybrid. So I'd hope that WEC holds up their end of the bargain on that and makes the privateer slightly more competitive for Le Mans. But I'll be making a whole separate video on my YouTube channel about that because it's a little bit of a rant that I want to get into later in the race.
There's no way that they're going to balance it out for Le Mans because here's my one little take. This is only going to take a minute. What headlines would you rather read
Here
the day
we go
after
with
Le Mans?
Kevin Rollins, the conspiracy theorist. They're gonna raise.
He's not wrong though. I think I've heard this one.
Yeah.
He's not wrong.
Would you rather read Rebellion Racing wins the 24 Hours of Le Mans with some random ass drivers that you've probably never heard of, or
Well, I've
Fernando
heard of them.
Alonso wins
Well,
Le
unless
Mans
you're a big racing fan. I mean,
with Toyota Hybrid? What headline would you rather read?
Well,
the next
all
day?
right. Well, then that brings up the topic of fairness versus what they're going to do just for media coverage. And I'd hope that WEC has higher standards than just looking for a good headline at the end of the day, especially with
think
the
you're-
biggest
I
race of the
think-
year.
No
I
matter,
think you can hope that, but you think you know what's probably
Well,
going to happen.
I
We'll
No
see.
have
matter-
no idea right
no
now,
matter
but
what, no matter what genre of motorsport is your favorite, you know who the hell Fernando Alonso is. But barely anybody outside of sports car racing knows who the hell Thomas Laurent is. So that's the
True.
point. They want a universal name to win the race.
honestly, like you said, I could see them possibly doing that. I just hope that they have higher standards than actually employing that just because of one driver. But I'll get
they
into that a
did
little bit later
employ it
because
at Spa.
yeah, I mean, well, that was inside Toyota. That wasn't really on. I mean, I'll give WEC a free pass on the EOT for Spa because it was the first race. So I'll have to see what approach
But
they take for
slowed
future
down.
races.
They
I know,
slowed
I saw
down.
that.
But
I don't know. Again, I'm gonna give them a free pass. On most circumstances, I wouldn't because, like you said, they slowed them down after the prologue.
they
But
slowed down the non-hybrids. after
yeah, they slowed down the
prologue, that is.
non-hybrids. But I'll have to see what they do moving forward for Le Mans because hopefully, in my mind, they take the fairness step and make the privateers somewhat competitive on the level of the hybrids, at least the fastest privateer, because EOT is not balance of performance where each car is supposed to be at the same pace level. But again, I'll make a whole video on that later in the week on my YouTube channel. The last thing I want to touch on, because pretty much I already mentioned the Harry Tinknell accident earlier, 29G impact, a very similar fashion to Pietro Fittipaldi, who crashed in the 67 Ford GT. At the end of the day, it was Aston Martin Racing taking home the victory in GT-AM.
After an amazing battle.
Yeah, that was an amazing
The
battle
other
at the very
Aston.
end of the race. GT-AM kind of made that race worth it all in the end. There was going to be seemingly a prototype battle at the end, but again, in a second I'll talk about that. GT Pro was won by the sister 66 Ford GT, the sister car to the one that crashed. And lastly, LMP won because we do have stone cold evidence that Toyota basically told the number 7 car at the end, don't fight the number 8 car. And they got close to them on a couple of occasions, and they were within a second, and then they just sort of fell back again.
Well, what happened with that was there was a minute gap between Alonso and Mike Conway in the 7 car. And then the safety car came out with an hour to go because of the SMP racing crash at Eau Rouge. So that minute became 15 seconds, and Mike Conway just sent it. And the 8 car was also having gearbox temperature issues. So Fernando wasn't going full pace, and it looked like Mike Conway was going to steal the thing. But no. And it looked like that twice as well. Before the final pit stop and then after the final pit stop, but then they had to step in and let Fernando win.
Now, Toyota themselves have said, we told them from the beginning we were going to let them battle until the last pit stop because they didn't want them fighting at the end because they didn't want a similar situation to what Red Bull Racing did at Baku in Formula One. But I think it's honestly pretty transparent that the number 7 car had the ability to pass cleanly at the end. And team orders on the first race of the season makes absolutely no sense to me. There's no championship to be won. There's no points even scored yet prior to that race. So what's the point?
I mean, if you
They're
look
trying
at
to keep
the
both cars
championship,
clean.
the championship isn't even going to be over until over a year from now.
Yeah. So they're I'm not much of a racing conspiracy theorist. However, I'm going to say
They
that
implemented team orders because of
yeah,
Fernando.
they did that one for the headlines. I think it's pretty transparent, regardless of the fact that they said that they had that planned out from the beginning. The very last thing I want to go over is there was a crash at Radeon with one of the SMP BR1 prototypes. So two big crashes over the Spa weekend for the BR1 cars. I'm gonna give a solid attempt at his name here. Matevos Asakian crashed, like I said, at Radeon. There's no video of it that's been released. However, some witnesses there, some spectators, said that the car apparently got airborne and went up into the fence. So obviously that sounds like a very hard impact. He
And
ended up
that
being
was
all
a
right though, which is
hard lick.
that's the main thing, is that he ended up being all right. But it looks like BR1 might have to do some evaluations on the car leading into Le Mans if they want to not have a repeat of these heavy crashes. But SMP, they had some battles with the Rebellion throughout the race, so I think that it's going to be exciting going into Le Mans, especially considering the variation of aero packages that we had at Spa, where you had cars or teams like SMP running low downforce and teams like Rebellion running high downforce. So should be interesting when we come to Le Mans. And the very last thing to go over here, we had Indianapolis testing. The very first Indianapolis testing sessions occurred last week. Obviously, a test for pretty much open to all drivers on the first day. Then the next day was the rookie test and refresher for Danica and who else would it would Danica and Sage Karam. So Kyle, you want to take the reins on that one since you pretty much had nothing to say about Spa?
Well, the first day of testing, obviously, we saw Marco go P1 in the first session, and then after that, it was basically Kanan all the way through. I'm pretty sure he was also fastest in the manufacturer day that they had that wasn't streamed. Danica's first day was really fun to watch. Everyone was giving her crap for her slow speeds, but it was her refresher test. It was her first time back in the car.
The refresher tests are restricted on how fast you can go. So, and I also want to throw in the note in there that her car actually was suffering from overheating on her first install lap in the car.
Yeah, that was actually quite funny because she got in the car, did an install lap, and then it had overheating issues. So she did one lap first time back since 2011, and then came in, got out of the car, and the car to go to the garage. So then there was like another hour until she actually got to do laps, and then she did a bunch of laps for the end of the day, and then she obviously got to go full ham on the car in the manufacturer test, which Danica actually finished for her refresher before Karam did. I want to point that out too. I didn't say that to make Karam look bad. Just had to say that. We're doing 225 on the first day of testing with low boost, high downforce, and I think 226 was the toe speed, and I think 223 was a no toe lap. 222. But I mean, as much downforce as they could put on the oval configuration and the lowest boost possible, I think we could probably be in for some high qualifying speeds. What do you guys think?
Well, I talked to a mechanic that I know that works on Jack Harvey's car, and he said that with this new car, there really isn't much of a difference between the high downforce and low downforce variation of the oval or super speedway aero kit, because you really can't adjust the back wing. There's the two little wickers on the back that you can mess with, but that's really it. In terms of the back wing and the front wing, you can adjust it pretty well, but the only other thing you can really mess with is the diffuser.
And here's what's going to be fun about that with the aero. If there's not much to adjust, then really the only difference you're going to see, huge difference between the field on race day is going to be, your mechanical things like dampers and suspension and all that. So really the field probably could be one of the most even fields we've seen. Well, not even, but closer.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was pretty interesting to see what these cars had in store for each other on the test day. Now, albeit they weren't, anywhere near trimmed out. They were being very conservative. We still see some pretty good speeds turned in, and the fastest toe and non-toe was both set by Tony Kanaan. So maybe we could see a nice little resurgence with AJ Foyt.
I said this before. I think the best thing out of Foyt being quick with Kanan on testing days is if they can they actually have speed and they can be really fast. I think Davison with a good car, which that's linked to Foyt, that's the third Foyt car basically.
With Jonathan Bird.
Yeah, but if he can be in a quick car with like his teammate Kanan, then Davison will be a dangerous guy on race day.
Wrapping up this episode, just looking forward to the next weekend. We have the Nürburgring 24 Hours, which is one of the biggest and one of my favorite endurance races of the year. And because it's one of those big races, it's tradition that we make our picks for it and predictions for who's going to win. So the way this works is we just pick the top 3 for overall because there are a ton of classes in Nürburgring, and it would take us an hour to pick for every single one, and also it wouldn't be that effective because most of the drivers in the smaller classes are unknown completely. All right, so pick to win here. See, I could go bias and pick Audi. That's tricky. Well, you know what? Is it bias? Yes, but is it also reliable because they won a lot of endurance races, especially these big 24-hour ones? Yes. Did they win this race last year? Yes. So I'm going to pick the number 8 Audi to win. René Rast, Robin Freins, Dries Van Tour, and Kelvin van der Linde. Actually, quite interesting is that René Rast and Kelvin van der Linde are going to be racing in 2 cars in that race. They're going to be racing in the number 1 Land Audi and the number 8, so that's a little bit of an interesting thing.
In
to
the same
see.
class?
Yeah, they're allowed to do that at Nürburgring, which is why I love it, because it's very loosely regulated.
Well, remember 2 years ago, they had the same driver entry across 2 cars with the Haribo Mercedes, and whatever car was ahead at a certain time, they retired the other one.
In terms of who I think is going to finish second, pick for second place is going to be the number 4 Black Falcon Mercedes of Mauro Engel, Adam Christodoulou, Manuel
Metzger.
Yeah, Manuel Metzger, and Derek Mueller. And pick for third, I don't know. Again, there's a lot of cars, but I'm just going to say the number 1 Land Audi on that one. Chris Mies, Kelvin van der Linde, Sheldon van der Linde, and René Rast. Anyway, I'm going to move on to Kevin for the next one.
All right, first place I'm saying it's going to be the 1 car going back to back. Second place it's going to be the number 5 Black Falcon Mercedes with Yelmer Berman, Thomas Jaeger, Jens. I don't even know how to say it.
Lucas
Stoltz.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about the third driver with Jens Seyfarth or something like that. And then third place, I'm going to say it's going to be the number 3 Phoenix Audi of Christopher Haas, Frank Stippler, Friedrich Verstich or something, and then Nico Moller.
You know what, Kevin? At least I got like most of my drivers correctly pronounced.
I got 6
know
out of
German.
8.
Anyway.
I got 6 out of 8.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right. Lastly, Kyle, with the guy with the least sports car experience whatsoever, and he hasn't been reliable except for like his Sebring GT pick this year. So this will be exciting.
Wow.
Just
the green car, the Land Audi.
The green car, everybody.
The number 8 Audi, because there's another one with René Rast and Dries Van Tour and Robin Fringe. The 8 Audi is that one. The one with the. I'm asking questions here. Answer.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Okay, so that car's going to finish second. And then the third car, I'm going to say Black Falcon Mercedes, because I've heard that car said a lot, so I'm going to say that.
There's 2 Black Falcon Mercedes, so which one?
Well, the cooler looking one, I'm going to say that.
All right, so we're going to just pick a draw from the hat. We're going to say the number 5. No.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Them.
Okay, cool. You can see that he's pretty invested in those picks. Put $5 down on those.
If I get it right, then you do owe me $5 if I get that right.
That's fair. All right, sure. The Indy GP is also next weekend, and again, that's one of the biggest races of the year. So we're just gonna make quick picks for those. Myself for the winner, I'm gonna say Simon Pagenaud. I think he's gonna turn around his.
Laughable.
Would you two relax, all right? When you get mad when I pick drivers who I actually think have a
Simon
chance.
Pagenaud is garbage without downforce.
You know what, Kevin? He's
He'll still win
actually
it.
he's not garbage. I just don't think he's had a lot of luck this season. I think he's good at the Indy
He got
GP
wrecked by
things.
Ray Hall. He, doesn't have pace at
Anyway,
Barber.
I'm just gonna say Simon Pagenaud for that. P2, I'm gonna say I don't know. I was gonna say Scott Dixon, but they haven't been. Yeah, you know what? Screw it. Scott Dixon, P2, and P3. I really want to go with like an underdog here.
Graham Ray Hall.
Just,
Zach Veach. If you don't say Zach Veach,
I honestly
then
considered
he's
Zach
betrayed.
Veach, but no,
That's our guy.
no, you know what? I'm not going underdog. I'm gonna say Rossi for P3. Yeah.
It's weird when Rossi's not an underdog nowadays. Wow.
Yeah, it is a little weird. Anyway, Kyle, take up the next one.
It is kind of dumb not to pick Pagenaud or Power because Pagenaud's not having a bad year. He's having a bad year, but Chris isn't dumb because the GP has gone Pagenaud the first year, Power the second, Pagenaud the third year, Power the fourth. So it's Pagenaud's turn really. So, but I'm gonna be dumb and pick. It's hard not to say Rossi right now, but I don't want to be easy. And if I said Ray Hall, you'd criticize me.
I won't criticize you.
I'm gonna put him on the podium at least. I know
I
that.
picked bias for Nürburgring, so
Yeah, but Nürburgring's kind of like a luck kind of draw picking those 24 hours. Let's just pick free. I don't think it's gonna be a repeat winner. I keep wanting to say Rossi, but I'm like, I don't think it'll be a repeat from this year. I think it'll be new, or at least I want it to be new. So who's been fast? Second place, I'll give Dixon second, and I'll give Ray Hall third, and then first. Let's just say
someone.
Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Okay,
Gonna
I
run
was
this
considering
weekend.
him as well. So, yeah, he's been pretty strong 2018, so I'll give you that one. I don't know. I still think it'll be a Penske, if I'm honest.
Kind of got a chip on his shoulder from past few years. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
Kevin, you're the last one up here.
Okay, so I initially was going to say Will Power, Dixon, and Hunter-Reay because it was last year's podium, but I'm going to go off on a little bit of extreme here. The winner of the race is, I'm not just going to say my pick is going to be, I'm going to say will be the winner. Robert
Okay,
Wickens.
that's confidence.
Wow.
Robert Wickens,
I'm going to hold you $10 to that.
Alexander Rossi in second, and Scott Dixon in third.
All right. The last race next weekend is F1 at Spain. F1, like I've said before, has been producing some dramatic races this year, and Spain is the place where the 2016 Mercedes collision happened. So hopefully we don't see a repeat of Baku where two team cars get into each other, but you never know.
Rip.
It's been quite unpredictable, and the Ferrari versus Mercedes battle
Rip.
should continue to rage on. Anyway, last
have a
things
Twitter now.
here. Yeah, we have a Twitter at
I
Rainbows
manage it.
Podcast. Yeah, Kyle pretty
So
much manages it. I might post something
Sure.
here or there, but
If you want to talk to me, then I'm there.
yeah,
bro.
you can. If you have any questions
me up.
for us, you can ask them there, and then we can try to answer them in the next episode.
Yes, man.
And next week begins our whole overload of episodes for the month of May, because next week starts Indy 500 practice. So next Monday, week from today, you're going to be getting 2 episodes. You're going to be getting the regular Monday long episode, and then you'll be getting the 10-minute recap of practice and all that stuff.
And hopefully Kevin will talk to some drivers, and we'll
Hopefully,
get that
but that's
in
not
here
guaranteed.
too. It could be hilarious because he'll either get hilariously rejected or an hilarious interview. Kevin, can you at least wear the sombrero when you give the interviews?
Yes.
Anyways,
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up before it gets out of hand once more. Thank you all for listening to this episode. Again, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. If you want to listen to these in the future, youtube.com/c/deductive rain. I have Kyle and Kevin's YouTube channels on the card in the top right. If you want to check them out, go give him some love because they were kind enough to join me on this long episode.
I join you every week,
well,
though.
Kevin doesn't.
I'm stuck here.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
that's
stuck
kind of
here.
true. But you're
Guys, help me.
you're still
Holding
kind
me
to give up your
against his
time.
will,
Don't listen to
against
what
my
he's
will.
saying. That's going to wrap it up for this
Help.
one. I appreciate you all listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.